Hello, hello, hello.
And welcome to the Hildebrand Law Firm topic for today.
I'm Kirsten Hildebrand.
And I'm Matt Kaplan.
And today we're going to talk about what you're actually getting when you're buying a trust. You know, this is a really difficult one because buying a trust is similar to buying a car. You don't really understand the engine. You don't really understand the quality of the brakes. You don't really understand all of those wires and things going in different directions, if you're me at least. Now, somebody might really understand, and that would be a mechanic. And we kind of, as lawyers, are the mechanics of trust. So we understand when we look at a trust, what exactly is making that trust into a bad trust, a good trust, or an excellent trust. So we want to give you 5 different things to look at if you have a trust to determine whether or not your trust falls into that category of meh, or into that category of, okay, wow, this is really something that does reflect the current and best laws that we have on the books today.
And one of the overarching themes of trust is that you tend to get what you pay for. You know, I'm sure if you saw a car and it had all of the things in it that you wanted, let's say it had power seats, it had heated seats, heated steering wheel, great sound system, awesome wheels, you love the color and everything like that, and it was $2,000. What does it have? Like 900,000 miles on it? Is there no engine in it? Is it going to explode if I get in an accident? You know, that's kind of something, same thing with trusts. You know, most of the time when it comes to trust, you get what you pay for. And
If
so,
you have a beautiful leatherette binder and
right.
and the trust doesn't have the language in it that it needs in order to be able to get you from A to B, then the leatherette binder is not worth anything at all.
Exactly. It's written in all calligraphy. You know,
Right.
it's absolutely wonderful. Yeah, then it might not have all the stuff in it that you need. And so if your trust doesn't have some of these things in it, then yeah, you may have not gotten an adequate trust. And so for the first one is one of Kirsten and I's favorite topic and favorite things to put into a trust. That is the trust protector. Now, Kirsten, if you can give people a brief rundown, what exactly is a trust protector?
Sure. And so for a long time in Wisconsin, if there was an issue with the trust, the only way that you could obtain relief would be to file a lawsuit and get a judge to talk through what the situation might be and to develop a resolution, which of course is very expensive because now you're talking about legal fees. And part of the whole purpose of a trust is to make things less expensive. And so finally, recently, the Wisconsin legislature allowed for what's called trust protectors. And that is when you essentially give someone the authority to essentially become the guardian angel of the trust, and also the arbitrator. And this person basically does nothing unless there might be a problem. Let's say nobody is willing to act as trustee. Well, they could go to the trust protector, which is usually a law firm, and say, hey, we're having a problem with our trust because no one's willing to act as trustee. And the trust protector, meaning the law firm, can step in, have a conference, and say, how about this solution? And can actually write in an amendment or some other form what that solution would be. And so trust protectors have different levels of authority depending on the language itself. And so you want to also make sure that the language is very good for what it is that you'd be looking for. But this is a terrific way to, quite frankly, stay out of court.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're appointing an adult to be in the room just in case the children decide to act like children, or just in case there's any questions, any issues. The role of the trust protector, yeah, on paper is to act exactly like how Kirsten said, but I would think that the unofficial role is to kind of act as, hey, I wrote the darn trust. Come to me if you have any questions. Come to me if there's any disputes. I don't want you to have to go to court. I don't want you to have to fight amongst each other. Traditionally, the reason the trust protector role was put in place is because there's 3 roles in a trust. There's the grantors, who are most likely the trustees. There's the beneficiaries, and then there's the court system. By invoking a trust protector, you're adding another side to that, making it a square of people all included in the trust.
That's exactly right. Well, another really terrific provision to make sure that you have in your trust is something that I like to call a what if contingency. And that is, what if one of your, say, children predeceases you, and now there are youngsters who would inherit, people who are under the age of, and let's say it's 25 or 30, whatever age you feel like people should be in charge of their own money. Well, under normal circumstances in the state of Wisconsin, you can't inherit anything until the age of 18. But then when you turn 18, you get it outright. And so it's kind of like this all or nothing situation. Having a trust inside of your main trust that basically is a understated age beneficiary trust, where you can say, hey, look, I want the trustee of the understated age beneficiary trust to oversee the funds and grant or deny requests for money from somebody under the age of, and we tend to like anything over the age of 25 because we think then the cerebral cortex is developed enough to be able to handle having funds. But it also depends on how much, because if you're talking about millions and millions of dollars, it might be really a great idea to make sure that that person is even closer to 40 years old before they have complete availability for those funds. So it is possible for someone to have certain limited access or be able to ask for the money, say for a down payment on a house, and that will generally be granted by the trustee, but at least they're not buying a Maserati.
Right. In this way, everything is protected. Not only the money is protected, but the kids are protected. They're protected against themselves while still having them have the ability to benefit from the money if they need their necessities taken care of. So they can kind of still have that adult, even if that adult is no longer around giving them that money. And so the third and final thing that we'll mention in this video, provision for a trust, is a spendthrift provision. I know spendthrift provisions, Kirsten, are one of your favorite provisions, or
Yes, they are.
one of my favorites as well. And then I'll talk about what I think a spendthrift provision is in a nutshell, and then I guess you can let me know if your opinion differs. For me, a spendthrift provision in a nutshell just says the trust property does not belong to you, Mr. Beneficiary or Mrs. Beneficiary. You're just entitled to it. And so what's great about that is that if anyone comes looking for money from you, and they try to say, oh, wow, you're a beneficiary of this really awesome trust, I'm going to join the trust in this lawsuit or whatever, you can't do that. I'm just entitled to it. I'm just a beneficiary. I'm entitled to it. If the trustee gives it to me, it's not my money.
It's exactly right. It's an extra layer of protection. So the idea, well, let's go to the definition of a spendthrift. A spendthrift is someone who spends too much money. So it actually is the opposite of what it sounds like because it is an older English word. So the concept is, if I'm a spendthrift, I'm buying Gucci and Louis and Chanel and everything that I want anytime I want.
Mm-hmm.
And I get myself into some credit card trouble. Now, as an individual, I am now inheriting and am due to inherit this money from, say, my parents' trust. If my parents' trust has a provision in it that says that no creditors of me, the credit card company that wants to get paid for the Gucci and the Louis and the Chanel and everything else, that credit card company cannot come after the money that is still sitting in my parents' trust. Now, they could come after my money. So if it gets dispersed to me, then the credit card company can come after me, but not so long as it's sitting in the trust. However, the quality of the spendthrift provision is what makes or breaks this protection, because if the spendthrift provision is sort of a light dancing nothing, then it's going to be able to be invaded by the credit card company if they're motivated. But if it's a really strong, well-written spendthrift provision, then it will create the wall that my parents were looking to make sure was in place.
And what's interesting about spendthrift too is I read an article in, I believe it was Iowa. There was a guy in Iowa who had a trust with a really lax, crappy spendthrift provision in it. And because of that, so guy ended up going to a nursing home. He had his money in an irrevocable trust. Usually pretty awesome. I'm into that. But it had a lax spendthrift provision. Because it had a really lax spendthrift provision, the trust allowed his son to be a principal beneficiary. But with a lax spendthrift provision, the nursing home came after his son and said, hey, we see that the money in there is not an available asset for dad who started the trust, but it's available to you. So we would like you to then pay for dad's care out of the money in this trust owed to you. And took him to court, went all the way up to the Iowa Supreme Court. The Iowa Supreme Court said, tough break, bud. Your spendthrift provision sucks.
Ooh.
You have to pay the nursing home.
Is that how they use that word?
That's exactly word for word, tough break, bud. It sucks.
Okay. All right. Well, so that gives you a real world example of how we are engineers of words. And if the engineering is not done well, then you're not going to get a good result. And so it's very, very important to make sure that you have language in your trust that really considers these potential possibilities.
And in the next video, we're going to talk about disabilities. We're going to talk about those kiddos, making sure things are protected from them. And then we're also going to have one little bonus provision that Kirsten and I really, really enjoy. So make sure you come back for that.
We are here for your today and your tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us. And we will see you for part 2 of If Your Trust Doesn't Have This, you might want to think about getting it redone.